What's your favorite movie and why?
Okay, so obviously people have a hard time with that favorite movie. There's a million running through my head, but my initial reaction to that is Tombstone. So I'm gonna go with Tombstone.
It's so good. Are you gonna do anything, or you're just gonna sit there and bleed? It's like one of the greatest lines of all time.
I got 2 guns, 1 for each of you. I mean, me and my cousin can have an entire conversation only quoting Tombstone and Eddie Murphy Delirious, and we can talk to each other like this for hours. So greatest stand-up of all time, you didn't ask, Eddie Murphy Delirious. Greatest favorite movie of all time, Tombstone.
I mean, that to me is Val, and there's a lot of Val Kilmer movies I like. I mean, obviously I love him in the original Top Gun. That movie he did with Elizabeth Shue is highly underrated, where they're like searching for, I don't know, some energy source or whatever. Like, he's been in so many bangers, but like his seminal work, like his crowning achievement is losing 100 pounds and being Doc Holliday. I mean,
the best character ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
That scene where like they're showing off and he like starts spinning his like shot glass. Yeah. I like, he's just so cool. I'm like, this guy's dying of like pneumonia or cancer or something. And he's just like, I know I could kill you.
I'm in my prime.
I know I could kill you right now, but I'm just going to spin this little teacup and like basically make you look stupid. I can't wait till my kids are old enough to show them that movie. I think 6 and 8 is still a little too young, but it's coming. It's coming real soon. Welcome to the On the Edge podcast with your host, Scott Groves. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, we're here with my buddy, Max Leaman, and Max and I go back about 5 or 6 years. We worked together at a company in the mortgage space, and Max is the CEO of a company called loanpeople out of Austin, Texas. And I got to tell you, what I love about Max and his wife, Dana, is that they absolutely just crush the game of building a mortgage company. And back when like our branch, we're kind of friendly competitors. When I thought our branch was killing it and we were doing like 25, 30, 40 loans a month, I was like, yeah, no one's going to beat us. All of a sudden I see Max's name pop up and it's like 112 loans funded this month, 120 loans funded this month. I'm like, we are pathetic. I have to fly out to Austin to meet this guy to see what they're doing. So I did. I flew out to Austin. We met. You were super gracious. You have a great team, a great office. You work with your wife, which I want to figure out how you guys manage that like CEO, CMO duties, because my wife's amazing. But when we try to work together, there is some conflict. The market has obviously shifted since we originally met. So I'm interested to hear about your journey of owning your own brokerage and funding your own loans and what the finances have looked like. And then I think what would be really interesting to realtors and loan officers and just business professionals in general, I'm sure we'll go deep into the weeds on some mortgage stuff, is like how you've built this massive brand in Austin, Texas over the last 10 years. Because every time I talk to somebody, they know who you are and they know your brand and they know loanpeople. So first of all, welcome to the show. Give us the update of what's going on with your company, the market in Austin. You know, we're filming this in January of 2024. It'll probably come out March or April of 2024. So what's going on in your world, mortgage-wise, finance, real estate, or we can ditch all of that, talk about your kids and the you know, I don't know, the Longhorns. I don't really care. I have no agenda here. So give me.
No, it's all good, man. First of all, thanks for having me. You know, when I saw you posting looking for stuff, I was like, I love talking to this guy. It's always fun. You know, we get to see each other a couple times a year at the different conferences, but you know, it's always whatever, 30 minutes here, 40 minutes there. And I always enjoy hanging out with you. So I'm happy to do this, and thanks for having me on. You know, things are definitely looking up. The saying around here is there is light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a train heading at us. November, and kind of I saw it coming, you know, being in this kind of new role that I've been in the last 4 or 5 years as CEO. I'm starting to go to a lot of different conferences with owner operators, president CEOs, all of that. So, you know, you kind of get a different sense of what is kind of going on at a larger level. At one of the conferences I was at in September, the term nuclear winter was thrown around a lot. And you know, it was really, really bad. It just even from a production standpoint. And I'm in Austin. We're licensed in a bunch of states, and we can talk about that. But Austin really got hit harder than most places. Austin boomed in 2021 and the first part of 22. And so we really got hit hard. I was actually at Mastermind in May and my COO was in DC at a meeting with a group that we're a part of with Rohit Chopra. And about the same time, Rohit Chopra and Barry Habib are on stage, and they're both around the same time going, "Oof, those of y'all in Austin, sorry."
And just for clarity, when you say it got hit hard, did you guys see in 2023, did you see a dramatic drop in property values or just number of transactions slowed to a crawl? Because I think there are two. Okay, yeah, because I think they're two very different things, right? Like lenders and realtors, we get paid on transactions happening. So property values might be staying pretty like insulated for the consumer, but loan officers, realtors, moving companies, title companies, we're just eating shit because there's no transactions.
That's right. Well, and when you look at it, so on my podcast, we kind of talked about this last week. We did some of this, but property values came down 8-10% overall, from the peak in 22 down to the bottom. It's 30%, something like that, 25%. But really, year over year, came down about 8%. When you take Austin and you adjust the population, transactions were worse last year than in 2008. And even when I look at Leaman Team's production, because that's always been my metric, I mean, we're throwing up numbers that we were doing from a volume perspective, 2013, 2014, Leaman Team still did over 200 million last year, which is amazing, but that's not for Leaman Team.
Right.
I mean, we're a $300 million team pre-pandemic. So
right.
You take that plus margin compression, which we all know all too real. And it was bad. We lost money last year. We basically broke even as a company in 22. We were smart enough it's funny, as a loan officer, since starting my own company, I've taken home less money than ever. And during 20 and 21, we opened our doors January 2020.
Good timing.
And I kept most of the money in the company, which was great. And so we lived off of that last year and towards the end of 22. But things are really looking up. We outclosed January 23 by about $1 million and about 4 transactions. But February, we're going to be close to double what we did last February as a company and as Leaman Team. And significantly more units as well. Apps are up. The pipeline's about at what we were at June levels of 23. So, I mean, it's feeling really well.
Nice.
And I don't know.
I want you to define a couple of things for me, because I think you're in this super unique spot where you went from top producer to company owner, right? So it's like, you went from the guy who's like, hey boss, I know you're hiding something from me. I need a lower rate on this deal, to like, now you see all the way through the end game. So the first thing for the people that aren't like super in the weeds, nerdy loan officer people, and even a lot of loan officers that think they know what this means, they don't actually know what it means. Can you explain what margin compression in the mortgage industry actually means?
Yeah. You're not selling your loans for as much money as you need to A, break even, B, make a profit, all of those things. So here's what happens, right? From a loan officer's perspective, oh, this company over here, like, I have to give a 2-point concession to match them. Why are their rates so much better than mine? Oh, this company over here doing this. So now it's a race to the bottom. A lot of companies, and especially at the height, what they were doing, most companies, almost all companies, not all, but almost all companies that only originate loans and do nothing else, lost money in 22 and 23.
Yeah.
The majority of the companies that made money were only able to make money because they have a servicing portfolio and they're making money off servicing.
And can you explain what that is?
So if for a company that services loans, you make your monthly payment to that company, right? They get a premium off of that and then pay out Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, pay out your taxes, all of that. So there is revenue in being a loan servicer. That's a whole other side of the business that we can get into as well, because servicing doesn't happen overnight. We are Loan People is an approved Fannie Freddie seller servicer. We are approved to service loans, and we will, but we have to be very, very strategic about doing it. And the reason is it is very cash intensive. So I'm just going to kind of use some random numbers here. If mortgage company A, Scott Groves, opens up his own IMB, his independent mortgage bank, he's going to originate a loan. He's going to go sell that loan. He's not going to retain any servicing. He'll sell it. His full margin, let's say, is 4 points. He'll get 4 points on that. If he's going to retain the servicing on it, he'll go sell that loan, and he might get 2.5 to 3 points on it when he sells it, because the rest is made up over time. And you generally make, for servicing a loan, 25 basis points, right? For those that don't know what that is, from a math perspective, it's 0.25%. So on 100,000, you make $2,500 a year, right? So it takes a lot of loans to build that up. Secondly, it takes you about 4 years to make up, just to break even on what you gave up on the servicing, on the by retaining the servicing.
So nobody wants to service right now because the rates are so high. Everybody's probably going to refinance within 4 years, right?
When you listen to Barry Habib and all these other people talk about there is no premium, no one wants to pay a premium, that's why. When you look at a rate sheet and all of a sudden you pay 1 point and it lowers your rate 1/2 or 3/4 of a point, versus 1/4 of a point, which is normal times.
Yep.
That's why the runoff, nobody expects these to last long. So you can't get any sort of premium on it. You can't get any sort of multiple on it. So you've got to be very careful. So it's like, we will slowly start doing this. And I have a whole lot of ideas to do things with servicing that other companies haven't done. Again, because I am still an originator,
right.
And I'm an originator at heart. And that's how I approach this business. So you take all of that, these companies that have their servicing portfolios were able to generate, I mean, if you have $100 million, $100 billion, $100 billion, it doesn't matter, right? Like, you're making some money and you can offset losses from the origination side. And most companies are just sitting here trying to figure out, how much money can I stand to lose and keep my employees so that when we get to the end of this thing, I'm still here.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me give you my rudimentary perception of how this all works. And you can tell me as a company owner, you mentioned, selling the loan. So I'm going to use a $500,000 loan because in some areas that's a really big loan. And in some areas like Los Angeles, that's somebody putting 50% down. So Max Leaman, the loan officer, no, let's take it this. Scott Groves, the loan officer, works for Max Leaman. I originate a $500,000 loan. That loan funds, and Max Leaman has to have a line of credit at his company to send out the $500,000 to actually fund that loan. The client gets their home and everything appears to be done to the realtor and the loan officer. But behind the scenes, Max now needs to take that loan at that interest rate with that program and that quality, and you go to the open market and you say, okay, we will sell this loan for, let's say, 350 basis points, which is 3.5%, which, if I'm doing my math correct, on a $500,000 loan would be $17,500 is what Max Leaman's company, loanpeople, gets into the coffers. And that company takes your loan, you pay off your line of credit, and you made $17,500 for the transaction. Now, the loan officer, myself, working for you, probably makes 1% or 1.25% or something like that. So I get my $5,000 for doing the loan. The company makes the $12,500. I understand, because I'm not an idiot, that businesses cost a lot of money to run, and Max is not a nonprofit, so he has to, make some money on doing this business, right? So that I can have a job. But loan officers are like, well, yeah, the company makes like 3 points and they're making like $17,000 and all I get is like $5,000. Why should I care? I need a lower rate. I need higher comp. I need better this. I need better marketing. So can you talk from this, your company takes in $15,000. We'll just do it for round numbers. The LO gets $5,000. You've got $10,000 left over. Where does that money go? How often are you eating into that $10,000 to try to keep the deal? And just, when you're selling the loan, we'll come back to the servicing idea, but when you're just selling the loan, how much does it cost for you to keep the doors open with electricity and regulators and support staff and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Because I think loan officers think that there's way more profit in the deal than there actually is. And you just said last year, I appreciate the transparency, your company lost money. You guys did $200 million in loans and fucking lost money, which is bonkers.
Oh, We did just under 450 million in loans as a company and lost, I'm not afraid to say it, we lost a little over $1 million.
Yeah.
Like, that's part of it.
Mhm.
We lost less than most other companies lost.
Right.
And talking to warehouse lenders and all the auditing and everything, it's like, oh, if y'all only lost $1 million, that's
You're killing
you're
it.
doing great. That's awesome.
Yeah. And by the way, Fannie Freddie had that thing where, like, if you were losing money as a company for 2 quarters in a row, they were going to cut off your line of credits and they were going to take away your ability to do FHA loans. Every mortgage company in the country lost money more than 2 quarters in a row. So they kind of silently just slid that law aside and like, well, we don't want to put the whole mortgage business out of business. And that kind of went away, right?
Yeah, and it comes down to balance sheet as well. And that's the thing. Like, how strong is your balance sheet? We have a ton of cash in the company. Like I said, we really saved a lot. So we have a ton of cash. And our burn rate was such that even though we're a small company, I got a much longer runway than some of the bigger, more well-known companies. And you've started to see that happen.
Yeah.
Companies getting absorbed, acquired. You saw some stuff today, even on Housing Wire. I don't want to mention any companies by name, but you know what I'm talking. I mean, it's not done.
Right.
We're at this point where people are just out of money, and they got to get it off the table. So, as far as what does it cost? Everyone's a little bit different, and you've got fixed cost and variable cost and all of that. From a company perspective, I need to be doing roughly about 35 to 40 million as a company for us to be profitable to break even now. But that's after all the changes that we've had to make, whether it's reduction in force, all the things that everybody knows has happened in this industry.
Right.
We were not immune to that. So at some point, our break even was 40 to 45 million. And now it's less, and things will change some. I mean, this industry ebbs and flows, and I have set this up. My whole idea behind this, right? I was a top producing loan officer. We still am. And I'm looking at all these different companies out there. And for me, I needed a place to originate loans. I've worked at some really strong, good companies in the past, and I'm grateful for all of the time that I had there. For me, what I realized was I don't need a whole lot of support from many layers of management. I don't need divisionals, areas, regionals. Like, I don't need all of that. There is a place for that, but I didn't need it. I'm bringing in, me and my wife are generating leads.
Right.
We're bringing in all the business. I needed a place to put my loans. And I realized in order to be competitive, I needed to really kind of strip out the middle management piece of it, which is how I kind of started going down this road. And then it was, well, I'm not going to be a broker. Not saying anything about brokers. It's not for me. There is a world for that, and I know a lot of successful brokers out there, and that is a model that works for some folks. I'm a control freak. I need to control it from start to finish, and so for me, it was very important to have a IMB from the beginning.
Because you can, correct me if I'm wrong, because you're your own independent mortgage bank, loanpeople is a mortgage bank where you have your own line of credits. If it gets to crunch time and you say, hey, you know what? If I was working over here, if I was going through a broker source, I would not be able to fund this loan today because we don't have this last pay stub or whatever, but it's my freaking money. It's my company. I'm going to give the authorization to go ahead and fund that loan, and we'll get the follow-up bank statement tomorrow or whatever. Yeah. Like, I know this client is good for it. Like, you've really put yourself in the spot where it's like, hey, you might work a whole year and lose $1 million. But you have complete and infinite control over your process, soup to nuts. And most people don't have the financial wherewithal to set that up.
That's right. And I don't have any investors. Like, we bootstrap this thing ourselves. It's just us. I don't want to answer to anybody. I want to do things the way that I want to do them, that is best for the community that we're developing. So what we have, the kind of one of our pillars, if you will, is what we call flow blow. It's for loan officers, by loan officers. And we really, it sounds kind of corny, but we like that is very much how we look at things.
Right.
Do we have to make a change? Do we have a situation? What do we need to do? How is this going to impact sales?
Yeah.
How is this going to impact ops? You know, the other side of that is for loan ops, by loan ops. But like, what as a loan officer, how does this impact me? So a lot of times when we're at a crossroads of what to do, it's kind of a democracy. You know, I get on the phone with everybody. We do a weekly, we call it study hall. It's not mandatory, but people get on and sometimes, you know, it's 15 minutes. Other times it's an hour, talk about what's going on. But if there's an issue, like, okay, here's the issue. Here's 3 different solutions that I can think of. What do you guys think? And what is the best way to do this? You know, we switched credit reporting vendors and went to a different pricing model. And it was, well, we can raise the price of the credit report, or even if we leave the price of what we're charging the consumer the same, we'll still save a bunch of money. What do you guys think? My financials to the company are open. Everybody knows them. Like I've talked about them on company calls. We are in this together. Everyone decided, hey, we think it's best for us to just leave this cost as is because costs are crazy. We're going to save some money, so let's do it that way. I mean, there's a lot of different examples I could give of things like that, which is, for me, it's awesome. I got to build the tech that I wanted to be able to do 1,000, 1,200, COVID 1,700 loans a year. And then I get to do it on a platform where everybody gets to have input.
Yeah. And I have an interesting question for you, like, because I know that you and especially your wife, Dana, are like super forward thinkers. What size do you think the company can get to before you lose some of that? Because I will tell you, the most fun that I've ever had in my career, and I don't mind using them by name because I think Movement Mortgage is still a great company. I think they're still doing a lot of great things. But inevitably, you get to a level where you have to have divisionals and regionals, and you have to have a bigger legal department, and everything has to go through compliance and marketing. The most fun I've ever had in my entire life doing mortgages is this like 3-year period was Movement was between like the 3 billion and the 5 or 6 billion company, and everybody had a direct line to the CEO and everybody was rowing in the boat together, and there wasn't these little cultural cliques that eventually end up happening after you get a couple thousand people in a company. And now, you know, again, I think it's a good company. They're doing a lot of good things, but they've kind of lost that core ethos of like the people that were there that built it early. And again, I don't feel bad like I'm talking poorly about them bringing this up. It's just like companies change, right? Like you get to a certain level, GM operates a lot different than Tesla, you know, because they have 20 times as many employees. So do you have a vision for like, man, if we could get to $1 billion a year in fundings, you know, you're rich, your wife is satisfied with the growth that you guys have created, you're taking care of your loan officers, and that's kind of it? Or do you have a number in mind that like, we can't grow past this and be a small mom and pop, everybody has input? Because I know you and Dana are forward thinkers. Like you've thought about this.
I'm not trying to be, and Movement is a great company, and the stuff that Casey's doing is amazing. And I've actually never had the pleasure of speaking with him. But he does amazing things. And some of these bigger companies out there, they're good companies, and there is a place for loan officers there. For me, I want to stay grounded. I want to keep originating. I can't originate 300 loans personally a year anymore. It's more like 60, but I want to be in the trenches. Like I want to deal with that. So we talk about it, you know, and I think when we look at it, it's like, if we can grow and somewhat, because loan amounts will just continue to go up. But, you know, if we can be somewhere between a $5 and $10 billion company over the next 5 years, maybe longer to get to 10, but like that's a good spot to be in. I don't need to make infinite amount of money. Like what I really want is to improve people's lives, both borrowers and loan officers and anybody else that works in the mortgage industry. So, you know, this job is really, really tough. It's really, really stressful. So how can we keep it to where people at least want to be where they're at, and not, I'm just here because it's good enough and I don't want to leave, but really are bought in and feel like we're doing something good, and we're all, to what you said earlier, rowing the boat in the same direction.
Yeah.
So that's kind of it.
And that, I mean, that's just, you exemplify that in the name of your company, right? Loan People. This isn't a loan company. This isn't building a loans. This isn't a loan warehouse, or dare I say Loan Depot. This is a company that's created for people, whether those people are your clients or your employees. And I just know this about you to be true because, you know, when we've met and I've seen you given the it's more Dana. See your wife give the soft pitch to why they might want to work for you guys. It's not about like product and pricing and we'll buy you this. It's like, dude, how can we make your life better? How can we make your marketing easier? How can we help you connect more deeply with your realtors? It really is. And I appreciate this about you, which is why I'll always have good competitors on our podcast. Like we don't work at the same company. I'm never going to live in Austin, so we probably will never work at the same company. But like, I just love people that are putting people first in this business, because the monotony of looking at 1003s and tax returns and fighting over appraised values, it can wear on your soul. You know, much like you, I'm 23 years in and there's things about this job I still love, but there's a lot about it I dread because it's things and stuff and processes and it's not people. So I just shout out to you, man, that I believe in what you guys are building, and it's super cool.
Thank you, man.
So we explained margin compression, circling all the way back to my original example. You know, the company makes 3 points, let's say. So you make $15,000. The LO gets 1 point. They get $5,000 on that $500,000 loan. What kind of expenses, like this, I imagine this had to be eye-opening for you when you went from producer to CEO of like, holy shit, there's a lot of costs to build a loan.
Yeah. Well, and you know, I've always looked at P&Ls and all of that, but what I did not know coming into this, and it's why I put together a team of people that did, I know how to be a loan officer. I know how to run a P&L. I know how to run a branch. I don't know how to hedge a loan. I don't know how to sell a loan. I don't know what goes on in post-closing. I don't know any of that. But it's everything. You know, you have cost for your LOS. You have cost for your POS. You have cost for your CRM. We also have what we call a lead intake system that we've dealt with. So we have that. You know, you have cost for your Optimal Blue or whatever your pricing engine is.
Right.
You know, what a lot of people don't know is a lot of these companies, whether you're, Blend or Simple Nexus or whatever it is, you got to pay them typically a fee for every loan you close. You know, if you're on like a Salesforce based, like we use Jungo, but we took our Jungo and completely broke it and rebuilt it better for the way that we do business, but you have to pay a monthly fee for that per user. Even the LOS system, you have to pay a per seat fee, but then you have to have additional seats because you have to have testing seats, and then you also have to have IT security, which I'm like, yeah, you got to be secure, and you don't really even want to use a third party for that. And in this business, I mean, we see all the hacks that are going on. Like, that's a huge expense. We get attacked every day, just like everybody else. I mean, and like we spend a ton of money on IT security. And then you have all the other stuff that comes up. You have, loans that can't be purchased for one reason or another. A loan that meets a guideline. We have a loan right now. It's a $1.7 million jumbo loan. It's a great loan. Low DTI, 80 LTV, 780 credit score. The investor that we sold it to doesn't like the appraisal. We met their guidelines. We also got a CDA that supports the value. They don't like the appraisal. They're not buying the loan. So I got a $1.7 million loan out there that I got to now.
And real quick, what was the projected income on that? Was it like 2 points, 1.5 points, 3 points?
It's jumbo, 2 points.
2 points.
About 34.
So you've got
roughly about 34 grand.
You've got $34,000 in revenue you're expecting, and you currently have a loan for $1.7 million sitting on your books, charging you interest. And so I got to imagine selling that loan versus not selling that loan quickly is like what, $40,000 or $50,000 cash flow issue right now?
Well, it's still on the warehouse line. Right. So and we have time, like we still, and this kind of thing happens, but yeah, I mean, you start getting to 25, 30 days, you start getting to 60 days and you start to have problems, especially because a lot of times when you go to deliver a loan to an aggregator, which for those that don't know, an aggregator is like a Wells or a Chase or a AmeriHome or a third party that buys the loan. A lot of times they won't buy anything that's aged for more than 60 days. So the big piece of all of this that a lot of loan officers don't know about is post-closing. And it's really, really important to have a very strong post-closing department. If you are at a company that you never really hear anything about post-closing, they're doing a really good job because they're solving all of your problems they're solving all of the problems after the loan has closed without getting you involved, right? And that's how we do it. I mean, every now and then you might hear from an underwriter, "Hey, I need you to call this customer and ask him for this," but there's probably 10 or 15 of those times where you didn't even know about it.
Right.
Right. So yeah, I mean, but now I got to pay interest on my line, right? And the interest gets more as it goes on. So that starts to become an expense.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we're in a lowering rate environment, so this one might actually pan out. But if we're in a rising,
and you've already paid your loan officer, you've already paid
loan officer's been paid,
the LOA's been
everybody's been paid.
Yeah, so
Everyone's been paid.
Probably $20,000 disappeared out of your pocket in fixed expenses. You're expecting to get $34,000 in on this loan. You don't currently have $34,000 in on this loan, and you're paying interest on this loan sitting on your line. Like, you start backing up a couple of these, and you can see why companies, even large $2, $3, $4, $5, $10 billion mortgage companies, they get in big trouble real fast.
It can happen. Absolutely. And at least the other thing I was going to say, like, at least now rates are stable to coming down. If this was 6 months ago when rates were skyrocketing, I've already closed the loan. Now I got to go deliver. We've had this happen where we went to go deliver a loan for one reason or another. It couldn't be purchased. This actually did happen. We ended up losing about $20,000 on it because by the time we got it to a different investor, rates were so bad, I couldn't go back and the loan's closed. I have to deliver this loan at a higher rate or pay to get it down, right?
Yeah. So
now the cost.
Wait, let me see if I understand that. You closed the loan based on where prevailing rates were at 6.5. Rates moved to 7.25, and now you're trying to sell an investor a loan that's at 6.5 when they can use that same money to buy a loan from ABC Mortgage at 7.25. Why would they possibly buy your loan?
Right.
It's like you're trying to sell a bond that's at a lower rate.
Well, they'll buy it, but you're not getting your revenue on it. You're losing money on it, and that happens. That happens. You have buybacks. We had a loan that was performing.
What does that mean, by the way?
The borrower was making all of their payments, making their payments on time. 80% loan to value is about $450,000 loan. Investor comes back a year later. Hey, there's some undisclosed debt on here via a business, and they were right, and we're going back and forth on it, and it's a repurchase. So now
Wait. A year after you sold the loan, the client's making their payments, so they're clearly not in financial straits. The investor who bought the loan is obviously not tipped off that something's going wrong because the client's not missing payments. But some audit was triggered a year later. They finally got to doing their due diligence, and they were like, "Oh, by the way, your underwriter missed something. Here, buy this loan back," even though the client's been making their payments for a year.
Yeah. And a lot of times this is not just with aggregators, it's Fannie Freddie too. And sometimes it's a Fannie Freddie audit that triggers down to the aggregator that comes back to the IMB.
Why the fuck would anybody want to buy a mortgage company? Why did you do this to yourself, Max?
Because I'm fucking crazy.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. By the way, but I do not have the emotional maturity or the temperament to do what you're doing, because the first time some company I was doing business with a year later said, we don't like this loan, I would lose my shit. I would be suicidal or homicidal or something.
Look, this is all part of it, right?
It's cost of doing business.
It is risk reward. I have a very high tolerance for risk. I swing for the fences on a lot of things. I bought a bunch of fake internet money that went close to zero. It'll come back, right? Like Buffett says, it's not a loss until you sell it. Right. But like I have a very high risk tolerance, and I carry that over into the business. So we had a good loan. Now I could go scratch and dent this loan.
What does that mean, by the way? Because I've heard this term before, like, scratch and dent, and we lost a ton of money.
Yeah. So if you have a loan that can't be purchased or that is a repurchase, and you don't want to be out the full amount of cash of this loan, you can go to the secondary market on what's called scratch and dent, where they might give you 70 cents on the dollar for the value of the loan, 75 cents on the dollar for the value of the loan.
Now, wait, is that 70 cents on the dollar for the revenue you were supposed to make, or 70 cents on the dollar for like the total value of the loan?
Like, instead of like, if I was going to get 3 points on it, they might give me whatever,
1.5 or something,
whatever. Like you end up losing money on it, and it's like, well, I can either like, yeah, here's this $400,000 loan, we'll give you $350,000 for it or whatever. Or you could keep it on your line. You could keep it. So we kept it. And the guy's making his payments. And so I got a loan on the books that's making 6.5%. I got a loan that through a series of circumstances, it was to save a relationship, a referral partner relationship. The loan officer made a mistake. It went too far. It's a $200,000 loan. You save a relationship, and it's like, well, that's an investment property. It's a 40 LTV. It's a $200,000 loan. It's an 8% rate. I'll just do the loan.
Yeah.
So I didn't sell it to anybody. Like, we just kept it.
Making your 8%. By the way, I have heard from some other CEOs of mid-sized mortgage companies that like this is where you start your servicing portfolio with the stuff that you're like, just keep it. Just keep it. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh wait, I got like 20 loans on my books. I guess I got to get a servicing department. I guess I got to get a foreclosure department.
That was always the plan, right? The plan was to always have a servicing portfolio. And so like as we started, how quick can we get Fannie Freddie? How quick can we get our servicing approvals and all of that? And so, we're building it out and we'll be cautious about it. The other thing that I think is really important while we're talking about stuff that people don't really know, hedging is a really big deal. And most people don't know what that means. Most people don't know the difference between mandatory and best efforts when it comes to locking a loan.
Talk to me like I'm a fourth grader because I barely made it through geometry, much less calculus in high school math. But there is this boogeyman in the mortgage space called hedging, right? And I will tell you, I know of some examples with some companies where the secondary guy, now owns a private island because he basically screwed the loan officers, had a much higher rate than expected and was able to hedge and do all this stuff that I don't understand. And then there's other experiences. I know for a fact I worked at Prospect Mortgage at a time, and I don't know what any of this means. I just know what the outcome is. They mispriced their hedge, and the CEO wrote a $2 million check to cover effectively a loss on what they thought rates were going to be versus where they sold the portfolio of loans that funded that month. So talk to me again, like I'm a third grader. What does hedging mean, and how does it positively or negatively affect the owner of a mortgage company?
Hedging is protection, right? That's really all it is. It's not really a moneymaker. It can be at times, and it can be a money loser at times too, especially with all the stuff that we just went through. There were times where we lost money by hedging versus going best efforts. So let's start at the basics. You lock a loan, best efforts. What that means is your company has shown you a rate sheet from 7 different aggregators, and you picked AmeriHome, and they went and locked that loan at that price with AmeriHome.
Okay, so let's use some real rates. Just let's say I go to my rate sheet, and the best price that day for my scenario is AmeriHome's at 7%. So now I have locked in, my client got a lock agreement. We're going to close the loan at 7% with AmeriHome's. And as the loan officer, that's all I see. That's all I care about.
Yep. Right. Until, and here comes the problem. What happens when I know this overly off the top of my head, so this is the example. The condo that your customer is locked in at is less than 400 square feet. AmeriHome won't take that loan. So now you, loan officer, are 2 weeks away from closing, and you can't deliver this loan to AmeriHome. So you have to find a different investor to lock it to.
Okay.
But now the market's moved and rates aren't 7% anymore because it's the end of 2023. And now the rates are 7.5%.
Right.
So now you, as the loan officer, are left with the choice. And maybe your company works with you, maybe they don't, but you are either have to go back to the customer and say, this investor won't take your loan. Rates are worse. I have to raise your rate to 7.5%, or it's going to cost you X amount to get this 7% rate.
Super fun conversation. Been there.
Right? It sucks, right? But now that loan gets locked somewhere else. It gets delivered. You know what you're going to make on it because you know whether there's a pricing exception on it or not. You know what the revenue is. To stop that from happening, companies hedge. So you see your rate sheet, the rate's 7%. Company's going to go take out a trade with a broker dealer via MBS securities, right? 6.5 coupon, 7 coupon, 5.5 coupon, whatever that is. Whenever you're looking at, MBS Live or MBS Highway, whatever, and they talk about coupons, that's what you're talking about. You take out a hedge, you take out a trade because you're going to bet on rates getting worse. Okay? If I give the customer a 7% rate and I take out a trade, essentially kind of like shorting the market, that the price is going to, rates are going to go the wrong way. They're going to get worse. So by the time it's time for me to deliver a loan, rates are at 7.5%. Well, I've closed this loan at 7%. I have to go then sell this loan, and I'm going to take a loss on this because now, again, rates are at 7.5. I got to pay whatever it costs to whomever's going to buy this loan to get that 7% rate. However, because I took a trade out and hedged against it and said, hey, if rates get worse, now I'm going to make money on the hedge. So when I go to close out my trade, I'll get a pickup there.
Got it.
The idea is it keeps you balanced. You're hedging against both sides. So when rates are getting worse, you want to be hedging. The thing is, when rates get better, you still want to hedge because you have to protect yourself. But if everybody knew how this worked, and I actually have some friends that run secondary that don't hedge, and I don't like. There's been months where he's just like, oh shit, like in September 23. September of 22, when rates jumped 0.75 of a point on that one day, he's just white as a ghost. But then when rates get better, he's doing better. So on the other side of that, when rates improve, now I've got this 7% rate, but rates came down and rates are at 6.5. So now when I go to sell this loan, I'm going to make more money than I thought because I got a 7% rate.
Right.
But I lost on my hedge trade on the market getting worse. Excuse me. So I have to pay my broker dealer because I lost on that trade. So even though I made more money here, I paid out more money here.
So the hedge is really like an insurance instrument against rates getting way far against you. So let's say, for example, you funded that loan at 7% and we went into some catastrophe and all of a sudden rates were 8.5. You are going to eat doo-doo on selling that 7% rate to a loan aggregator or servicer at 8.5 because they're like, why would I buy Max's loan for 7% when I can get loans that are funding today at 8.5? So you eat crap on that loan that you sold below the market, but your hedge, like you said, like shorting the market, is performing at such a high value because that small insurance policy you bought is paying off big time since the market went from 7 to 8.5. And if you didn't have that hedge, you ate doo-doo on the loan, but you didn't make anything on your hedge. So now the company, theoretically, if you do this too many times over, is out of business. So that hedge is just an insurance policy. And I think the underlying concept here that most loan officers don't understand is loan officers think when you lock in that 7% rate with AmeriHomes, I think loan officers think, oh, AmeriHomes just put aside $400,000 on this loan at 7% because they know that loan is coming. But that doesn't really happen, right? You're just telling AmeriHomes, we're going to try to deliver this with you at 7%. And if the rates go up, Mac's going to eat doo-doo on that loan, but you're going to make money on your hedge. Is that correct?
Well, so it depends. If I lock the loan best efforts and I actually, Scott, you locked a loan, we locked it with AmeriHome, it's best efforts. Well, AmeriHome is hedging on their end.
Okay.
So when you hear your company say, you can't just cancel this lock with AmeriHome, like we need to, rates got better, the client wants to renegotiate. No, you can't break the lock with AmeriHome and go lock it over here with, Flagstar, right? Because Amerihome will charge your company a pair-off fee because they now had to close out their trade for what they had so somebody's hedging this somewhere,
right?
So that's why if your company is a best efforts company or they're locking things best efforts, they're going to tell you no, you have to go with whatever the renegotiation policy of the investor is. It's also why when companies have a float down, and I never really understood this until I started a company. there is real cost to the company, the bottom line, in floating down a rate. Like there is cost. The value of your pipeline becomes less.
So let's go back to this AmeriHome example. I locked the rate at 7. The client calls me up and says, hey, Scott, I've been keeping my finger on the pulse of the market. I know I can go to ABC lender and get 6.5. So me, the loan officer, I come back to Max and I'm like, hey, Max, like we originally locked this loan with AmeriHome at 7%. They can go get the same AmeriHome loan from the guy down the street at 6.5 just because the market has moved against us. Let's float down the interest rate to 6.5. You are eating that cost of floating down the rate because you originally promised AmeriHomes you would deliver the loan at 7, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So first, what you'll do is you'll call AmeriHome and say, hey, we need to do a renegotiation, and they'll have their own policy, and they'll come back, and whatever the policy is, then you can go back to the loan officer and say, here, this is what you can do. I think most people understand that whenever you float down, you're not going to current market anyway, for the most part, right?
Right. Maybe you'll split the difference and you'll get 6.75, or I lose the deal and they got to go start over.
Right. But from a company owner perspective, so a loan officer, like if the loan officer says, I've got to get 6.5, I'm going to lose this deal. And the company goes, I can't do that. And then the loan officer gets upset. But the thing is that if I, as a company owner, let you break that lock with AmeriHome and go lock it somewhere else, now AmeriHome's going to hit me with a pair-off fee, which in some case, and this happened to us before we were hedging, especially at right after the pandemic, March, April, May of 2020, when everything was all over the place, and we got hit with $25,000 and $30,000 pair-off fees from investors because we broke a lock, relocked it somewhere else. They follow it around. They know that this happened. They know that you closed it, so they go and hit you. If you don't, if the lock breaks and you don't close it, they're not going to hit you a pair-off fee. That's just part of them hedging it. But if MERS is a real thing, they can track it, so that happens. So from an owner's perspective, you have to be conscious of that. So we'll make business decisions. We don't really lock best efforts. I mean, we mostly hedge 99%. On the off chance that you do lock something best efforts and rates change dramatically, we'll sit there and look at it and say, okay, well, maybe what we can do is let you break this lock. We'll go over here, but we're going to charge you a half or whatever it is because we know we're going to get hit with some sort of pair-off fee and try to cover it that way. But it's really like when float downs are done right, it's fair to both parties, but the company is losing money when that happens.
Yeah. So where I've seen this play out the most, because there's tons of buyers in the conventional Fannie Freddie space or whatnot, where I've seen this happen a lot growing up in Los Angeles, doing most of my career there, doing a lot of jumbo loans, is we'll have Scott Groves and my buddy Justin Bale at two different companies, but they're both set at, let's say, 225 bips with Chase. We're selling jumbo loans to Chase. Justin and I are both at 100 bips compensation, but one of our rates will be way out of whack with the other because Chase has basically gone to my company or his company and say, hey, you keep locking these loans with us and they don't pull through, so the pull through rate is no good. You keep canceling these loans, so our cost to hedge the pipeline at your company is so much more expensive. Maybe Justin's rate is at 6.75 and mine is at 7% because Chase is basically penalizing our company if we don't have a good pull-through rate. And I'm guessing it's all because of this, because we're locking loans with Chase. For whatever reason, we missed a guideline, the client wasn't serious, the loan officer didn't know what the hell they were doing, and they just locked at the cheapest rate instead of actually looking at the guidelines. And now all of a sudden your rate sheet starts to get hit because you're not delivering the loans with the frequency that they expect. Am I thinking of this correctly?
Yes, and it's not only that, but it's also actually how much just an overall volume you deliver, also the quality of loan you deliver. So Chase, when you talk about them specifically, and everybody does a scorecard, but Chase, like their pricing to your company is set based on your and part of that, your scorecard is the quality. What are they doing in post-closing? How much back and forth is there? What is your grade? And your grade does dictate your pricing that you get from them. So yeah, those examples are real, which is why it's so important for loan officers to understand. And I never really understood this. There's a lot that I didn't understand, but like your loan officers at your company that you don't know that you'll probably never, well, you might talk to them, but an actual, they never talk to each other. Y'all are on the same team, and you all have to be doing a good job, because if this guy over here does a bad job, it can negatively impact your pricing.
Yeah.
And when you think about it further, when this guy does a bad job and he's not putting in quality loans, and now all of his stuff takes 2 or 3 times the amount of underwriting manpower because it's all such a disaster, that impacts you. It impacts your turn times. It also impacts what the company needs on a margin level, because now I have 2 choices. I can get rid of this guy, or I can hire another underwriter to cover the manpower that he's sucking up.
Yeah.
And that's part of, like, when loan officers are looking for companies. I certainly never did this because I never thought about it, but I see much bigger now for obvious reasons. It's not just what are your rates, what is your comp, right? Like that's not it. But one of the things that nobody really asks is, what is the quality of loan officer that you have? And are you a company do you let any loan officer come? Do you only let certain loan officers come? Are you, do you want more technicians? Are you a call center where you just throw and these guys can just throw anything against the wall? Like, how does that play into your business model? Because that has so many impacts. It has impacts on turn times. It has impact on pricing. It has impacts on systems, because a lot of companies will set up their systems to play to the lowest common denominator. Like, there's so many things that come in to play there, and it's really something that a lot of people don't even think about.
So I've got a real life example, and you will relate to this. I remember a time. So if you work in Southern California, you just have to know how to do jumbo loans, period. You know, we got guys in Manhattan Beach where the starting entry level price to a house is $2 million. Like, if you can't do jumbo loans, you're dead in the water in Southern California. So I remember this moment in time where there was another market. This is gonna be a long story, but you'll get a chuckle out of it. There was another market where it's like they had a high balance, right? They weren't quite expensive enough that they did a lot of jumbo loans, but they did a lot of high balance loans. And this was at a previous company I was with. We brought in this new jumbo investor, and their price was smoking. For like the first time in my career, we were beating Chase, we were beating Bank of America. But what happened is they put this guideline in that you could do the loan $1 above the conforming limit. So all of a sudden, maybe it was like Atlanta, Georgia or something, the region over there, thinking that this was like a Fannie Freddie type guideline loan, they started locking all of their high balance loans on this jumbo investor. And the fallout was astronomical, because they were thinking Fannie Freddie 1-year tax returns. No, it's a jumbo 2-year tax returns. They were thinking Fannie Freddie 10% down. No, you have to go 20% down. They were thinking Fannie Freddie, this business owner and this. And so, like, within 60 days, there was so much fallout from this other region. I remember my regional manager from Southern California on the phone with the CEO screaming, "Don't let those motherfuckers do jumbo loans. Cut it off. Take it out of their optimal blue. Tell them they're fucking idiots." Because for this moment in time, he was recruiting all these people who are like, "Hey man, not only are we a heartfelt company, not only do we close in 7 days, or we can process in 7 days, we finally have jumbo pricing that's like Rockstar, where you can compete in LA and Manhattan Beach and San Diego." And this other region across the country destroyed our rate sheet with that investor because there was so much fallout. Rates went like overnight 0.5% higher. Now I know it's because of what you just said. Our scorecard went to shit. And we were I didn't even want to see those motherfuckers at President's Club, because I was like, you guys ruined my awesome jumbo investor by putting all your shit loans. Well, they weren't shit loans. They just didn't know how to underwrite them. And I'm like, you guys ruined it for us. And we were so angry. I think my regional almost got fired that day. Probably should have got fired that day.
I mean, but it's
a real thing.
Like, it's all about being on the same team, and you're on the same team. Side note to that, let's also remember that the margins on jumbo loans are at 50% to 66% of what your conventional margins are going to be.
Right.
So you do the $1 over, the company now has lost 2/3 of the revenue, or a third or a half of the revenue as well. So that's also a thing. That, like, it's I think it's really like it's stuff like that. Like it's why transparency is so important to me. I've worked at really great companies before I did this, and I thought that they were not being transparent. They weren't being. Most companies aren't as transparent as I am, but that's I think
you're an oddity.
It is what it is. Like that's I'm doing something different here. They weren't lying, and they weren't not being transparent, but they weren't doing a great job of explaining and educating why. Like we all know all these companies have to make money. Like none of us are nonprofits. Right. But if you can really dive in and show people like this is real, this is what I'm talking about. Here's the example. Like people will understand and people will be on the same page. And everybody will really put that boat in the right direction. So to go back to what you said earlier, that's why like I don't want to be that big of a company. 5 to 10 billion it's great.
It's huge. It's huge. Hey, this quick interruption is brought to you by me, Scott Groves, the host of the On the Edge podcast. This podcast is brought to you by me. I'm a loan officer who can help you with a mortgage in all 50 states across the United States. I also coach loan officers. So if you are a home buyer who's looking to get a mortgage, if you're a realtor who's looking to partner with an awesome loan officer, or if you're a loan officer looking for coaching, get in touch with me. It's those sources of revenue that allow us to produce this podcast and get out a new episode to you every week for the last couple of years. So if you're looking for a mortgage, if you're looking for a mortgage lender to partner with, or you're looking for a mortgage coach, I'm your guy. Now back to your regularly scheduled programming. So you were saying something about transparency, and it's like, I don't need my company to beat me up, but I think it would go a long way hearing from secondary of like, hey, Scott, thanks for that loan. We made a killing on it. And hey, Scott, this is going to come at no cost to you, but we lost $12,000 on that loan because there were some post-closing issues. I'd be like, oh yeah, it would just be a good reminder of like, this is the skin in the game that the company has. Like I'm not due any more than I'm already getting.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. And there's so much work and so much that goes on the back end. And where I think companies fall short is they're afraid to show what they're making. Like they're afraid. Executives are afraid to show what they're making. Some of these publicly traded companies don't have a choice, although they can kind of manipulate numbers and whatever. But everybody thinks if so-and-so sees that I'm making this, then they're going to want more.
Right.
It's all about risk. What do you risk? I have a lot of risk on the table. I'm here to make money. So you're going to bring in a loan and I'm going to pay you handsomely for it. And if I can get a little bit of extra pickup on the hedge, awesome. I'm going to do that. And that was the one thing when we're talking about hedging, like the other reason you hedge is because you do get a little bit of a pickup. So the companies will see somewhere on average of about a 25 basis point pickup by hedging versus being mandatory.
How does that happen? Like because I would feel, just hearing you say that, I would feel like if there's 25 bips of profit in there, how has the company or the servicer or the MBS hedge, whatever they're called, the broker dealer, like how are they allowed? Like, why do they just want Max to make 25 bips for being a good guy and doing correct job? Like, how is this happening?
Well, it's not that, but what happens is, when you lock a loan, you see a 30-day price or a 45-day price or whatever it is, right? When you hedge, you're not locking that loan with anybody. So it's kind of the equivalent of when you look at your rate sheet, now you're looking at a 5 or a 10-day lock and the price is about, 10, 15, 20 basis points better. It's that same thing. It's because you only actually have now locked the loan with someone for 24, 48 hours. So that's why. And it's along those same lines why, as you see rates, a 45 sometimes is worse than a 30, and a 50 is worse, or a 60 is worse than a 45. That's why
it's covering that expense. So it's like dumbing this down again to a third grade level, like that extra money you're making on your hedge. It's because you as a company are kind of picking up like 30 days of interest, for lack of a better term.
That's a way that you could think about it. Sure. But there's also risk. Like, again, we've lost money on the hedge, especially when the market's all over the place and when the market's moving really quick. Like if you don't time the exit of your trade with the sale, with the commitment of your loan, exact. I mean, there's been times where if had we not hedged, we would have made more money.
Yeah. You know what this is reminding me of? And are you a sports gambler at all? I know you're a sports fan, but do you like to gamble at all?
A little bit. I mean, I do, like, if I go to Vegas, but if I really gambled, I'd be a degenerate. And so I generally have to stay away from it.
Me too. So what most people don't understand about sports betting is that, let's say for the Super Bowl, maybe Chris can look up what the Super Bowl line is. They'll say, okay, team
2.5.
2.5. Okay. So team A is going to win the game by 2.5. The sports book or Vegas doesn't actually think that team's going to win by 2.5. What they're trying to do is they're trying to level out the playing field where you get, $100 million come in on the 49ers and $100 million come in on the Kansas City Chiefs. And the VIG, so you bet 110 to win 100. They just want the book to be totally even, and they make their money on the VIG or that 10 basis point spread. That's all they want to do. They want to get in $1 billion on this team and $1 billion on this team, and everybody bet $110 to win 100. Cohort A pays off cohort B, and they make the 10 basis points in the middle. That's kind of what the hedge is, right? It's like you want to balance out your books with your risk, and you want to make that little tiny VIG in the middle.
That's exactly right. And that's why the line starts moving. If too much goes this way,
right?
They gotta that's exactly right. That is a great analogy. That is good job.
My gambling degeneracy finally pays off on a podcast that 5 people will listen to. We're killing it, Max. We're killing it.
Yes.
You've covered a lot of it, but one of the questions I had for you is like, what's been the biggest aha moment or the biggest eye-opening moving from a $200 million producer? And, we've already lost all the non-loan officers, but any loan officer still listening knows a $200 million producer gets a lot more insight into the operation of the company than the dude doing 2 or 3 loans a month, right? You get invited to the roundtables. You see some of the behind the stuff, secondary stuff. You're in some of the strategic meetings. So it's like a $200 million producer is about as close as you can get to being an owner without being an owner. But still, you've mentioned a few things. Is there anything else that's been really eye-opening moving from producer to CEO? Because it's like Gary Vee would talk about this, going from like, I'm playing in the dirt to now I'm operating in the clouds. And I love the fact that you're still doing a few loans, 60, 70 loans a year, that like, oh no, I still play in the dirt sometimes to see what the operation flow is and to make sure my company is doing the right things for the loan officer. But now that you're playing in the clouds, what's been some of the either expenses or lessons or things that you have to learn to get better? What have been some of the aha moments for you?
It is not easy owning a mortgage company or running a mortgage company. It is not. You think you're going to come in and do things so much better. For me, I thought growing was going to be super easy. Everybody knows who I am, especially in Texas. Like, Max doing $300 million a year, like, great. Top 10 Scotsman guide, #1 in Texas. Everyone's always reaching out to me. When I was at the sales rallies at my previous company, like, I kind of felt like a celebrity. Like, I couldn't walk down the hallway without people stopping me, or like sometimes I wouldn't go out because I just didn't want to be bothered. And so I thought, oh, well, look, we're going to start this company. We're going to build it the way people want. And then people are just going to come because they're going to see it's me and we're doing this. And I couldn't have been more wrong. It was either, oh, well, if you can do it, I can do it. I'm going to go do it. Or it's the thing that I never thought would come up. You're new. How do I know you're going to make it? You're not going to be stable. Like, that never entered. Like, I was like, oh, of course, people are going to come. This is going to be easy. It is hard. It's also not nearly as profitable as you think it's going to be. I mean, we still have production on my Leaman team. We still have that, and it's very difficult to be profitable in this industry. It's very difficult to maintain that, and it takes a long, long time to build it. However, once you've got this company that's been around for 10, 15, 20 years, you've got a servicing portfolio, all of those things, like, it'll be good. I'm fortunate enough. We live a good life now, and I don't need to make $100 million a year. I don't need to be worth $1 billion. Like, I'm not interested. I want a good life for my family. I want a good life for all of my partners. And I just want everyone to have fun doing what we do. But it's definitely not about like, you're not going to make all the money in the world. It's not going to be easy. And it's honestly, it's way, way harder than I ever really would have imagined.
Yeah. And when you're thinking about recruiting those people, I remember talking to a buddy of mine, Tony T, who's actually out in your area in Texas, one of the most dynamic leaders I've ever had, and probably top 2 or 3 recruiters I've ever met. Like Tony Talkin' Java is a smooth dude. Like he knows how to push your buttons. He knows how to articulate the value proposition. He's just a great guy. I think maybe he's actually moved away from working for a specific company and now owns a recruiting company, come to think of it. But when you think about recruiting, one of the things that Tony pointed out to me, he's like, you know, this was a learning lesson for him. He got into this hubris of like, oh no, I want more Scott Groveses. I want more Max Leamans. We need more guys and gals that are doing, you know, 10, 15, 20, 30 loans a month. They have a growth mentality. They're like hungry, hungry, hungry. He's like, and those people are great to land, but there's a lot of quality loan officers that either because of their skill set or their sphere or their personality or their lifestyle choices, they do 3 or 4 loans a month. And he's, you know, admitted to me openly, this is not something he confided in me, but he's said this openly at conferences. He's like, I didn't put enough energy into recruiting or retaining those loan officers that do 2 to 5 units a month. And those are a great profit center for a company as long as they're not destroying your pipeline with dog shit loans, right? So when
That's exactly right.
When you think about growing your company, who are you looking for? Like who's the avatar to work for Loan People?
Good technicians, right? I don't care if you're doing 2 loans a month or 20 loans a month, right? Everybody's got good ideas. As long as you are bought into what we're doing, as long as you understand the fundamentals of being a loan officer, right? How do you qualify a deal? You know how to put a deal together. You know how to go out and talk to people and how to get business. People like you. You have the gumption to go out and grind in this business, especially the year and a half that we just had. You know, the loan officers that made the calls and did the coffees and did the seminars and did the webinars and did all of the boring, terrible, monotonous things that nobody likes doing, right? Those are the loan officers that I'm looking for. The platform that we've built, like we have the whole marketing, and you've seen it, but the whole marketing that we do is everything that got Leaman Team to where it is.
Yeah. I've never seen anybody more lit up talking about marketing than your wife. Never.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for 23 years. I've talked to every chief marketing officer. I've been pitched by a million companies. I've never seen anybody get as like just total exuberance over new marketing ideas and execution as your wife.
And that's not even a recruiting thing with you. Even if we tried to, we're not licensed in Nevada or California.
Right.
So it was like, that's just her passion about it. Right. And so that's the whole thing. How do we like opening that up so it's easy marketing? It's a platform that allows you to do the amount of loans you're doing in less time or to do more loans in the same amount of time. Everything's efficient. The marketing platform is unbelievable. And that's it. But you've got to be a good technician. We're here to help. We have so much support, right? When you need it. But if you're not even going to try, if it's just like, okay, I have this app, throw it in, go figure it out.
Yeah.
We're not for you.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's part of being smaller and tight knit, right?
I've got like 3 other mini topics I want to hit on. You got like 20, 25 more minutes for me?
Yeah, I got another 40 minutes.
Perfect. So I want to switch from the loan officer to the support staff, because here's where Scott Groves has failed is like, my previous boss, Chad Coaster, shout out to Chad. Love that guy. He's like, Scott, I have never met anybody that gets more horsepower out of their LOA than you. Like, you have taken people that were bank tellers, their personal life was in complete fucking disarray, and you train these people, you empower them, like you get more horsepower out of your support staff than anybody I've ever met, and you lose them every 2 to 3 years because either they get burnt out or I've now created my own competition because they see the light that they can go become loan officers, which I'm really happy for them. I mean, a thank you once in a while would be cool. But, you know, I have done a poor job of retaining support staff. So you combine that with the fact that coming out of 20 and 21, we had support staff people making more money than they ever thought they were going to. I mean, I know support staff people that were, you know, they had kind of functionally been okay with making $55,000 or $60,000 the rest of their life. All of a sudden they made 110, 120. I know some support people that were in the old grandfather comp plans that made $200,000 during the refinance boom. And now going back to them and saying, hey, we got to right size the staff. We got to right size the comp plan. We need you to be okay going back to making $75,000 a year. It's as if you shot their puppy in the head right in front of them, right? And I know you've done a really good job of retaining support staff. So tell me what it's been like, forget about the loan officers for a minute, managing expectations, compensation, attitudes with support staff. Can you speak a little into that for maybe the loan officers that are having problems right now?
It's the same transparency that you take on with loan officers, right? Like, again, I opened my financials to the whole company, every single person, from marketing to post-closing, IT, every single person, right? Like, people understand it. Nobody likes having tough conversations. I certainly don't like making tough decisions. It's not fun, you know, to be like, okay, these are the people that we have to let go. You know, we have to cut all these salaries and bonuses and whatever to X. Like, it is a daunting task. But being transparent and open about it is really, that's the key. It's really not even that difficult. It's like, look, here's what's going on. I should have done this 3 months ago, but I didn't because I felt like this was going to turn, and it's not. You know, I told everybody I was the first one. I cut my pay first before anybody else. And I was very vocal about it, not because I wanted people to feel sorry for me, but only because I wanted to show them, like, look, we are in this together. I won't ask you to do something I would not do myself. And even now, like, I sit down with, I've got 2 offices here. I've got one in the corporate side and one in the sales side, but I sit down in the sales side. You know, I'll talk to an underwriter and I'll dig into a file. Loan officers call me all the time. How do you put this together? How do you put that together? Processors will ask me questions. Setups will, like, I'm there, I'm available, but more than anything, I think just being transparent about what's going on, both when times are good and bad, that's the real key.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you. I want to shift gears to something that's near and dear to my heart. Is like the last couple of years, you and I have seen this infighting on social media, this brokers are better mantra, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, that's all fine. And that's a cool rallying cry for the people behind the scenes at certain wholesalers that have a vested interest financially in getting more people to become brokers, whether or not that's the right thing for their career. But what people don't see is what I see behind the scenes, where a couple times a week, I get the Instagram message or the Facebook message that's like, hey, Scott, I got talked into becoming a broker. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I do need a marketing department. I do need that middle management. You know, you got people with 18 months of experience in the mortgage business trying to go be their own broker. And it's like, you don't know the difference between Fannie and Freddie. You don't know the difference between retained servicing and sold. You don't know any of this shit. And you're going to go try to be a broker and run your own mortgage company. And they're dying on the vine because they were promised, well, instead of making 100 basis points, you can make 250 basis points. It's like, yeah, but you have to pay for your own health insurance, and you have to pay for your own CRM, and you have to pay for your own loan operating system. And, you know, they find out real quick it's not everything it's cracked up to be. But where I think the brokers are better have kind of won the PR war is this idea of having control over your career, right? And so I've been talking to this with our company at Synergy. I'm wondering if you're exploring something similar. I'm like, you know, the first mortgage bank that has a loan officer bill of rights is going to win. So if Max came to me, if all of a sudden you were licensed in Nevada and you were licensed in California, you said, Scott, look, I want you to take a chance on us, but here's what we're going to do. Your clients are your clients. you own your database. I'm going to put it in writing that if you leave the company, you can download all your clients from Jungo and like it's yours. You brought the clients in. Oh, by the way, we're going to let you operate with the Scott at Scott Groves team email, and we'll plug it into our Microsoft for compliance reasons. But like, we want you to be you. Like we know it's your career. It's your clients. You got a database of 5,000 clients and 2,000 realtors. Like we believe in you. We want to be the conduit. And I think the first mortgage company that does that is going to win because they're going to turn off all of the fears that is moving people to the broker channel because they want to control their own shit. And it's like, okay, yeah, maybe, but I don't want to be on the hook for a $25,000 EPO or repurchase. So one, do you think there's merit in what I'm saying? And two, you're smiling. So I'm guessing you're already doing something like this, like a loan officer bill of rights.
Well, it's funny that you said loan officer bill of rights because I had not thought of that, but I think that's genius, and I'm going to steal that. But when I left other companies, it was very clear, and it's very clear when loan officers try to leave companies, who thinks the data is whose.
Right.
Right. So shout out Usurpa. We've used them for years. That's who we use as our CRM. Right. And the way that we set it up is it's the loan officer's account. And some loan officers have Usurpa accounts that go with them or whatever, but when they leave their companies. When you come here, if it doesn't work out and you want to leave, you, Scott Groves, call Usurpa and say, cut off their access to my account. And that's in your contract. We are working through, because there actually are IT issues with having individual emails. Like there's a lot that goes on there. So we allow it now on an incoming basis, right? So you can advertise that. We are working on being able to like send out, but it's a very massive undertaking, and you've got to be very, very careful from an IT perspective. But I mean, you can have the Scott Groves team on your card, and you can have the Scott Groves team in your signature line at Scott Groves email, right?
Right.
All of that. One step further, I thought of this from experience of a past company. I'll put in your contract that I'll put an auto reply if you want it. If you leave, I'll put an auto reply on your email that says I'm not here. You can reach me at this contact information.
Yeah.
If you want it.
Do you know how much goodwill? I'm thinking of one company in particular that still has Scott.Groves at so company name, still has that email active, even though I haven't worked there for 5 years. And there's no chance I'm ever going back to that company just because of that. If they had a gentleman's agreement or it was in our contract, hey man, when you leave, we'll put an autoresponder on your email so that it doesn't look like it just disappears into the ether, and it'll say, hey, Scott's no longer with the company. If you'd like to work with us, here's our customer service number. If you'd like to work with Scott, here's his phone number and his personal email. If they did that, that company would have so much freaking goodwill, they would have probably recaptured a bunch of people that left. But that leaves such a bad taste in people's mouth, they're never coming back.
And here's the thing. Your customers are not my customers. You got them. They don't even know that you're at Synergy or Movement or wherever. They don't know, and they don't care.
Right.
When loan officers move in the industry, it's funny because it's a huge deal. I made this big move. No one gives a shit.
No one cares.
I'm speaking from experience. Like, I was so excited to leave the first company to go to the second company, and made this the industry thing. Like other loan officers, like, oh my god, did you see what he did? He left. Oh, well, no one else gives a shit. It doesn't matter. Those are your customers, right? And even now, we've had some folks leave, and when their customers email in, the response they get from me, because they're like, you still have to get those emails for a period of time. They get a response back. Hey, so-and-so's not here. Here's your information. If you'd still like to work with loan people, I'm happy to connect you with somebody. But otherwise, here you go. Here you go. It's like, I'm not here to steal anyone's business. I don't want it. If we're not a fit and you've got to move on, let's shake hands and be friends and move on, you know?
And you know what's funny? What's funny is like companies are doing a double disservice to themselves because like a company you and I left, one, they act that way on the way out. And then two, they don't even transfer your database to somebody else who starts calling the clients and the realtors and like, work with me. I would almost have more respect for a client or for a company if they were an ass to the loan officer on the way out, and then they actually had a strategic plan to steal that business, but they're an ass on the way out, and then they don't have a strategic plan to steal that business or steal those clients or steal those realtors. So it's like they got they got no pickup on the business, and they pissed off the loan officer on the way out and gave their company a bad name. It's hilarious.
It is a measure of a very good measure of a company is how they treat you when you leave. Like, and I know, like, I've heard a million of those. I also know a lot of companies that people leave and they come back to.
Right.
Like, and like, if you're an ass on the way out, they're not going to want to come back, you know? And it's the way that I felt about it was like leaving a company. It's very stressful when you realize this is not the place for me anymore, because now, right, you have your non-solicit, which most people don't have their teams carved out of their non-solicit, which creates a whole other set of issues. I immediately, like, that's even, like, your team is getting carved out of your non-solicit. Like, we're not playing that game. The only thing that I care about, if you decide that this isn't the place for you, do not take customer data. I have a responsibility to keep that customer's data protected. That is my responsibility. It's my, that's my risk, right? If you want the customer to reapply, go for it.
Awesome.
Have them resend pay. Don't take a 1003. Don't take pay stubs. Don't take bank statements. And when you come here, don't bring that shit either. Right. Have them reapply. Like, that's it. But your database is your database. Your contact info is your contact info. Like, that's what it's about. It's either a partnership or it's not. Nobody wants to be held hostage. And what kind of look does that send to the rest of the company? Oh, if you leave, they're going to sue you. Right. Because look what they did to me, or look what they did to him. Like, it's not, nobody needs that. There's plenty, even when there's no business, like there has been, there's plenty of business to go around.
Totally. And along the same lines of this Bill of Rights, it's like, I would love a company to say, hey, if you're thinking about leaving, come to us. Let's have one of those hard adult conversations. And if we can fix the problem, we can fix the problem. If not, we'll give you, we'll allow you to have a real 30-day notice so you can close out your loans here. You can ethically move new loans to a new company. It's just like, and I know that there's some legal licensing problems there and whatnot, but I just think the first company is, it's like, hey, we're all adults here. We can have adult conversations. And if you're going to leave, you don't have to leave in the middle of the night, because I'm not going to walk you out the next day with a cardboard box, effectively.
That's right.
And we're going to do this ethically, and we're going to make it easy for you and easy for me. And guess what? In the interim, we're going to keep the loans that have already applied and are in process, and we're going to make money off of that. And you're going to be able to take your new loans to the new company and make money off of that. And everybody's going to act like adults. But for some reason, no company is willing to draw this line in the sand that says, hey, we're going to act like adults.
And also, you're going to get paid. You keep the loans here, you're going to get paid on them when they close.
Right.
That's it. And like, there's companies out there that the agreements say you're not getting paid on anything that funds the day you leave. And you're not getting paid you're only going to get paid. Or there's one company out there that says you'll get paid, but 6 months later. Like, and I get that because of the EPO, but it's so, like, it's not necessary. Right. Why I did have a loan officer come, like, got sold on some stuff, and like, hey, came, sat in my office, like, I told you, if I was ever going to leave, I'd tell you. And I was like, well, hold up. No. Like, we're talking about this. He's like, what? Like, you're not leaving. Like, we're going to talk about this, and we're going to, like, you've been into me, I'm into you. Like, this is a partnership. We're going to figure this out. And he was so taken back by it. It rattled. Like, I didn't, like, you go to quit, they're going to walk you. I was like, that's not who we are, man. And he's still here and thriving. And it's a great relationship. And I'm super glad that he is here.
Amazing what happens when we all get to act like adults, right?
It's not that difficult. The company doesn't own you. They don't own your database. Just be partners or go your separate ways. And that's truly how I feel. So that's why I'm smiling, because like I tell people immediately, like, your database is your database. And I won't, like, if you import your database into our Jungo, I will put in writing that I will not market to that database. Now, if it's a loan that closed at the company, at Loan People, I do have a right to market to them down the road.
Right.
But customers that weren't mine, I'm absolutely not going to. And your database is yours to take with you. You cut my access off to you. I don't cut your access off. You cut mine. Like, that's how it is.
Yeah, I love that, man. And then for you personally, whether these are hard skills, things that you still need to learn about hedging and things that happen behind the scenes and going to probably an elevated level of meetings with, lobbyists and technical people, or maybe there's some soft skills. Like, what's Max Leaman working on to get better as a CEO? Because you're already have been for many, many years at the absolute top of the game production-wise. So anybody at your company can walk in and be like, I'm having trouble with this file. I'm having trouble talking to this realtor. I'm having trouble, with this marketing piece. And you and Dana got that on lockdown, which is one of the beautiful things about a producer moving into the CEO role. What hard skills or soft skills are you working on personally to be the best CEO of the best mortgage bank?
So one thing that I think I've been really good about is knowing that I don't know what I don't know, right? What I've had to really learn to deal with is emotion, right? And taking emotion out of it. Specifically, when we come into a time like we just had, and you're faced with, I have to make these tough decisions or the company won't survive, to make those decisions, and you have to make them quickly. It's a really good question. Nobody's ever asked me that before, but I think like looking from not just the loan officer seat in all instances, right? I have to make business decisions on loans all the time, but I also can't just tell every underwriter every single time, don't do that, lose that, forget that. Like, there is a balance where, we talk about FlowBlow and I'm an originator and we talk about originators and that's it. But loving on ops and realizing that ops is just as important, whether it's processing or underwriting or whatever, but like really like listening and stepping back and not being so quick to make a decision without really gathering all the intel. So there's that. And then really for me, like just learning, having conversations, like I'm very, all these different organizations that I've become a part of, or conferences that I attend, like having conversations with people, other CEOs, presidents, COOs, even other loan officers. One of the things that I really wish I would have done differently as an originator, like I never went to Mastermind. I never went to Building Champions. I didn't go to any of that stuff. And I arrogantly would say things like, people know this about me. Like I would say things like, I need to go to a mastermind. I am a mastermind. I don't need to build champions. I'm a champion. Like, it was very arrogant and short-sighted, because now, like, a lot of people don't know me, but more so like as I've gone to these things, you hear from a 10, 20, 30, $40 million a year producer. And guess what? I'm learning shit from them. They have ideas that I wasn't, whether it's a process or a marketing idea or whatever. Like, just because you're doing big volume doesn't mean you have it all down. And like, you really can learn from everywhere. So that, and then just conversations. I have no shame. Like I'll call anybody and be like, I don't know. I'm an idiot. Tell me, like, how do you do this? What is this? And I've got great people in place here that like, I'm going to be like, I don't know what the fuck y'all are talking about. Like, I'm getting ready to go to this meeting, with other owners. Can you explain, like, what is this? What are they doing? Like, and so just that kind of stuff. And then doing the podcast thing and kind of getting out of my comfort zone with like interviewing people outside of the industry, and that kind of thing, where now I have to like take time to research these people or read someone's book, things like that. Really, I'm trying to be more well-rounded, because I think that makes a better leader.
That's awesome. What great insight, man. I appreciate that. So 2 last questions we always finish on this. One is super softball. Well, for some people, it's really hard. What's your favorite movie and why? And then what are you, the person, the dad, the husband, the business owner, the loan officer, what are you looking most forward to in 2024? So either way you want to go with that, favorite movie and why, and what are you looking most forward to in 2024?
Okay, so obviously people have a hard time with that favorite movie. There's a million running through my head, but my initial reaction to that is Tombstone. So I'm gonna go with
Oh, it's
Tombstone.
so good. Are you gonna do anything, or you're just gonna sit there and bleed? It's like one of the greatest lines of all time.
I got two guns, one for each of you. I mean, me and my cousin can have an entire conversation only quoting Tombstone and Eddie Murphy Delirious, and we can talk to each other like this for hours. So greatest stand-up of all time, you didn't ask, Eddie Murphy Delirious. Greatest favorite movie of all time, Tombstone.
I mean, that to me is Val, and there's a lot of Val Kilmer movies I like. I mean, obviously I love him in the original Top Gun. That movie he did with Elizabeth Shue is highly underrated, where they're like searching for, I don't know, some energy source or whatever. Like, he's been in so many bangers, but like his seminal work, like his crowning achievement is losing 100 pounds and being Doc Holliday. I mean,
the best character ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
That scene where like they're showing off and he like starts spinning his like shot glass. Yeah. I like, he's just so cool. I'm like, this guy's dying of like pneumonia or cancer or something. And he's just like, I know I could kill you.
I'm in my prime.
I know I could kill you right now, but I'm just going to spin this little teacup and like basically make you look stupid. I can't wait till my kids are old enough to show them that movie. I think 6 and 8 is still a little too young, but it's coming. It's coming real soon.
Yeah, no. So, that's my answer there. What am I looking most forward to in 24? Profitability, but really, like, I'm looking forward to everybody being a little bit happier, and not just loan officers and people in the business, but people that we deal with. Everybody's been struggling. It's been hard. I talked to a friend of mine earlier this week who owns a bunch of restaurants here, and I was talking to him, and we hadn't talked in a little bit, and he called me to chat, and he made a couple of comments. I was like, are y'all struggling right now? He's like, dude, it is like, we haven't taken a paycheck since June. Like, this store's doing well, but this one's not. And like, we're going to get through, but it's tough. I was like, man, like, I thought y'all were doing great. I thought y'all were all past that. He's like, no. I'm like, well, we're both broke. There you go. But like, even that, and he owns a restaurant, like, there's a lot of people hurting, and a lot of people have just been pissed off and cranky. And then in our industry, or whatever industry you deal with, when your customers are pissed off and cranky before they get to you, then they're pissed off and cranky when they get to you. And like, I'm looking forward to everybody having fun again.
Yeah.
And that's really like, that's I guess, if I didn't ever think about this, but if I had a word for 2024, it would be fun. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Man, I love that. I talked to a client the other day where it was not a good conversation. It was a pre-approval, and like, he's a doctor and his wife's a dentist, and they have $500,000 down, and they have an 800 FICO, and they've done all the things right? And the husband was just being really kind of aggressive and rude to me. And I was like, all right, well, this is probably a deal I'm going to lose anyway, because this guy's not happy. Let me just ask the tough questions. And I was like, hey man, like, I'm just sensing like a level of bitterness. Like, I don't know if you looked at my podcast and you found out I'm a libertarian. I don't know what's going on here, but like, what's the real issue here, right? Because like, the pre-approval was fine. Everything was going to get done, but like, it was just angry. And I'm like, what's the real issue here? And you know what he said, Max? He goes, Scott, I'm just having a hard time wrapping my head around the fact that my idiot, asshole, broke brother-in-law, who doesn't have 2 pennies to rub together, because he happened to buy 18 months ago, he has a 3% rate, and he was able to buy a bigger, better house at a lower cost than what I'm going to be able to buy. And I did all the right shit, and you're telling me the best I can do is 7%. I'm like, well, first of all, thanks for being so honest with me. And like, markets are cyclical. I'm sure at some point, you bought Amazon stock at $100 a share, and now it's $1,000 a share. And like, we can't control these things. So I totally understand why you're mad. And there's not shit we can do about it, right? Like I'm mad that on September 16th, 2001, after the stock markets reopened, I had a friend who was like, I'm going all in on these 4 companies because I think it's the American thing to do. The stock market's down 30% because we just got the World Trade Centers demolished. And I'm buying, I can't remember, it was like Amazon, Apple, and something else. And she retired at 35. I'm holding on to that 25 years later. I'm like, still kind of bitter that I just didn't follow her lead, but it's like, we can't control that. Like, the stock price is going to be what it's going to be, right? And so we kind of laughed at it, and we had a good conversation, and he's been much more pleasant to deal with. But to your point, like, people just aren't happy right now.
Yeah. Well, and you will probably get that deal now. Like you made a connection outside of it. Like, and now he probably trusts you, and you probably get that deal. So yeah, I mean, let's have fun again.
Yeah. Well, first of all, man, thanks for being on.
Make mortgage fun again.
Man, there you go. I'm going to get some red hats made. Try not to get beat up in LA wearing a red hat. But
You're right.
hey, if people want to get in touch with you, whether they just want to connect, they want to follow your story, maybe they want to come work for Loan People if they're in Texas or the other states you service, where can people hit you up?
So my email is max.leaman, Leaman, at loanpeople.com. My phone number, my cell phone is 512-293-1239. My Instagram is at Max Leaman. We also have at Loan People. So call me directly, send me an email. It's all out there.
Dude, in a couple hundred episodes, when we have something go viral, and this is like the next Joe Rogan podcast, you're going to have 9 million people text you and be like, can we get on board? Can we talk? So, man, first of all, I appreciate you being on. I know you're a busy guy. Taking time out of your schedule midday is not easy. And two, like, more than all that, one of the reasons I was excited to have you on, and I mentioned this off air, is like, you're just an open book, man. You'll open the kimono and show the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that means a lot to me when we interview people, because like I knew that you weren't going to hold back and we were going to get the real answer. So I really, from the bottom of my heart, I just want to say thank you, because there's so many people in our space that are not honest, they're not transparent about the struggles, and they're just, frankly, they're just not as good of a person as you. So I really appreciate it, man.
Well, thank you for saying that, man. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you having me on. And let me just say this too, like, even for people that just need to reach out and have somebody to listen or talk to, call me. Like, it's not just about coming to get a loan for me or coming to work here. I just want to help people. You need help structuring a loan. You need to talk through something. Hit me up.
Appreciate it,
man. You do the same. You do the same, man.
We will. All right, man. Talk to you soon, and we'll have you on again later this year when things are real profitable. And you're like, yeah, I've got box seats now to the Longhorns because we're killing it again.
Well, I didn't give up my season tickets.
All right, dude. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, man.